Good afternoon and welcome back to the continuation of City Council's budget hearings. This afternoon, we will be hearing from the Department of Finance as well as the Department of Law with the Ethics Board. But we're going to begin with the Department of Finance. And as always, we'll turn it over to our Budget Director, Bill Urbanek, for a brief overview.
Thank you, Finance Chair Lavelle. The mission of the Department of Finance, the Department of Finance is committed to excellence in financial management for the city, its residents, and its businesses. Finance Department is responsible for the collection, deposit, and investment of all funds received by the city from any source. The department bills and collects tax revenues and fee revenue, intergovernment payments, grant payments, lease payments, and other payments to the city. The department also manages tax abatements, including homestead and senior citizen exemptions, tracks tax increments, and performs tax audits designed to help business submit returns and timely and enforce tax laws. Department is also the designated tax collector for the school district and for Carnegie Library. In addition to the collection of revenues, department performs other functions. This includes the sale of tax delinquent properties, the sale of other city-owned properties, as well as tax assessment appeals and citywide cash management. Department performs tax audits and ensures that money owed to the city is collected in a timely manner. Department also manages city debt through bonds and borrowing and manages the city's comprehensive municipal pension trust fund. To ensure accuracy and transparency, the department also facilitates the city's annual single and pension audits. There are 5 major divisions within the department: administration, treasury division, business intelligence division, the real estate division, tax compliance division, cash management division. And that's the overview there. Now to the finances, and as we have been discussing reductions. The total budget for the Department of Finance is $176,922,000. That's a decrease of what was anticipated in last year's 5-year plan of $7 million, or about 3.8%. Total departmental budget, not including pensions and the housing fund transfer, or $5,644,000. Increase from what was anticipated in last year's 5-year plan, $166,000. Total full-time positions, 38. That's a reduction of 2. Reductions in the first 6 months of the year is elimination of 1 financial analyst and 1 administrative assistant. The anticipated July 1st workforce reduction is $249,000. Based on the average wage of the current employees, that's equal to 8 employees that would need to be eliminated. Non-salary budget items have been reduced by $6,634,000, or 3.7% from what was in the prior 5-year plan. Examples of those cuts include the municipal OPEB, which is other post-employee benefits contribution of $2.5 million. That particular one was put in through our Act 47 plan as being required through Act 47. It's no longer a requirement since we're out of 47. The other post-employee benefit payments for police and fire continue as per their contracts. The debt is decreased by $3,129,000, 5.2%, due to the refinancing in May. Pension payments decreased by $1,595,000, and that's sort of an overage, most likely based on the elimination of positions throughout the budget. Operating transfer to the 3 taxing bodies trust fund was decreased by $250,000, postage by $75,000. Professional services related to rating agencies decreased by $50,000. Legal fees related to lien filings decreased by $50,000. Auditing and accounting services decreased by $51,000, and regulatory and legal advertising decreased by $20,000. Department of Finance will issue the $55 million bond for our 2021 capital budget, but the department itself has no capital budgets. As mentioned in the description of the department, one of the most important functions is tax collection and revenue collection, as well as revenue projection. As we know, when we started this whole budget process and through our overview, there's a severe reduction in revenue due to the COVID-19 situation here in the city. Luckily for us, real estate tax was collected prior, the majority of it collected prior to the closing that we had. But other of our larger tax revenues, such as earned income tax, payroll prep tax, were significantly reduced, as well as the projections for next year in this 2021 budget. Last year's revenue collections were $608 million, or the projected collection, budgeted projection. The 2021 budget is showing only $569 million. That's a reduction of $38 million in revenue. And as we stated before, the problems we have right now with this particular budget is a revenue problem. So we can only cut our way out so much, and that's what's reflected in the budget that we have now. Also under the Department of Finance are their trust funds. The Three Taxing Bodies Trust Fund had a beginning balance of $903,000. That's a reduction of $158,000 from the 2020 beginning year. Anticipated revenues, $500,000, including a $250,000 transfer from the general fund, as previously mentioned. 11 employees at 15% of the finance director, and the 15% of the finance director is budgeted in this trust fund. There's a reduction of 1 employee, that's a clerical position. One non-salary change, there's a $150,000 decrease to legal fees, which is related to clearing title. The Escheat Fund current balance is $287,000. The fire escrow balance is $922,000, and the Employee Health Care Program Trust Fund current balance $460,000. There's various agency funds, tax refunds, $250,000. Tax refunds regarding the school district, there's a negative $33,000 in that. Real estate tax trust funds, the city has a negative $200,000 balance. And the real estate tax refunds, school district, $233,000 positive balance. There is no money in the Carnegie Library line item labeled as tax refunds. The Department of Finance also hopes to help to oversee the other post-employee benefits trust funds and the Comprehensive Municipal Trust Fund, which oversees the investment of the municipal, police, and fire pension funds. And those are my numbers and my descriptions from the department. And I will hand it back to our finance chair, Councilman Dan Lavelle.
Thank you. And with that, we'll turn it over to our new finance director, Mr. Doug Anderson, and he can give us an overview or share whatever additional information he would like to.
Thank you, Councilman Lavelle. Thank you, members of council. Thank you, Mr. Urbanik, for your thorough background of our department. Also, thank you for beginning the conversation on revenues. I'll discuss a lot of that at the end of our presentation. Joining me today are Assistant Director Jen Gula and Operations Director here in the Department of Finance, Nareda Polanco. I'd like to thank them and the entire staff of the Finance Department for stepping up and continuing our operations here and serving the public during our current situation. I also want to thank former Director Lanier for the smooth transition. Assistant Director Gula took over after she retired and did a great job and also did wonderful help in the transition as well. I'd like to turn it over now to Jen and Nareda to give a short presentation on our operations here.
We don't hear anyone.
Nareda, you there?
Yeah, let me know if you can see the screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So this is just an overview that we have put together for our department, and Jen is going to start the conversation. I'm going to facilitate the presentation. So I'm going to mute myself, and Jen can start.
Okay, this is basically just an overview of how our department is broken down into the different sections. We have our administrative and treasury section, the real estate division, the cash management division, which actually oversees the banking and investment of all of the money. Business intelligence, which Nareda actually heads up, does all of our operations, and our tech. Our tax compliance section, which is business taxes, and back to treasury and administration. It all kind of flows together. Our departments are constantly in communication with each other and other divisions throughout the city. Go ahead, Narita.
Sure. So the tax compliance unit is focusing on collections, but it's also that compliance piece to make sure that everyone is filing on time and we're collecting the funds timely. So in that unit, all non-registration business activity is now in-house. We actually created an in-house application that allows for to look at earned income tax from the Jordan tax system, and flags accounts that have not been registered with the city and allow us to process that in our system. Non-filing cases are now auto-assigned and allows the system to generate notices for those that have missed the deadlines. And we send 30, 60, and 90-day notices. This allows for our staff to follow any non-compliance. On that case, sometimes businesses either miss the deadline or fail to notify the city that they have closed, that they no longer have business in the city. The non-filing cases for 2020 in the beginning of Q1 was 4,548 cases. And by the first week of November, we had it down to 506. So our staff has been focusing on contacting those accounts, making sure that they're making the payments that they need to make or updating our systems in the case of the business actually closed. Currently working with some departments also to add a compliance piece to their requirements for contracts and permitting, with the goal of increasing that compliance ratio. And we are also developing an automation step with PLI, with their one-stop permitting system, to help them shorten that permitting process timeline and also increase our tax compliance in that end.
Onto the real estate division, and we are actually on track to replace Remit 32, which is an imaging system. We actually purchased a new OPEX scanner, which is the same scanner that we use for business tax currently, and the RTL system, which operates on the back end to process all the data and send electronic deposits to the bank. So this should happen in early January 2021, and hopefully it'll make our processes more efficient. Well, actually, I know it will. So, and it'll actually cut down on staff time and processing as well, which some of it, even though we use Remit 32, is more manual. Our new abatement processes are currently being built and developed into our new tax system, which should go live and be implemented next year. And we're currently in development, the automation of the new tax system, which I just mentioned, which is Impact, and to connect that with eProperties Plus, which we use for, that's actually our real estate database, which has all of our properties that the city holds in our inventory, and also is the ones that are available for sale. And this should actually help to, this would actually help to hopefully process buyer applications much quicker. which in the past that's been a bit tricky and causes some backups in the whole purchase process. And also this year we collected, or 90% of our data actually has been migrated into Impact, and we are currently testing it in order to go live next year. Oh, and onto cash management. So even though COVID this year has caused some issues, we were actually able to use the cashier counter as one-stop shop, not just for the public, but that has to deal with the finance department, but also to other departments that also have to deliver paperwork and deposits to the finance department, so that we can ensure the health and safety of all of our staff and the public. We are actively developing the RTL imaging system capabilities to process all business and real estate mail and payments electronically. We're maintaining weekly deposit activity during pandemic, avoiding issues with delays in payments and payroll posting or the debt payments. And actually this was a huge undertaking. And actually we're about to have an issue again because some of the banks that we actually do face-to-face banking with are closing their lobbies. So it's been a challenge for us to keep that going, but we have been able to, which is a big feather in the cap to our employees. And we've also expanded our credit card programs by 86% over the past 3 years. And for those that have had the tech capability to do so, we've provided credit card options to units within other departments like parks and DPW to accommodate operational changes.
And the other unit is the business intelligence unit, and that's the one I lead. Our main goal this year, we've been hands-on on focusing on development of the new tax system. COVID has proven to us that we need to get this going. We need to provide an ability for our staff, but also for taxpayers to be more accessible and being able to do business with the city. So we're currently in implementation of the system. We are actually on schedule. This is scheduled to go live in June 2021. And this will consolidate what we currently use, 11 different data sources to complete their process. It will actually be combined in one. This system will actually allow us to integrate with other departments, which is great. This is why I mentioned about creating automation for tax compliance with CX and PLI, DOMI, departments that are now doing permitting online. The system will also create an online portal access for all taxpayers, so they will be able to not only register online with the city and acquire a tax ID, but they will also be able to file their taxes online and pay online as well. It's our goal to expand the one-stop approach at our cashier's office. So with COVID, we realized that combining this operation into one area not only make it accessible for the customers, they know where to go, they don't have to go to multiple desks or offices, but also makes it efficient because we can actually cross-train our staff so that we'll be more hands on deck. And starting June 2021, the real estate and business tax units will actually receive the GIS parcel data monthly instead of once a year as it is now. We're currently collaborating with Allegheny County to improve our data sets so that not only departments, the PLI and DOMI get the data, but we also get the data across all city departments so that we all have the same parcel information at the same time. And we can also share activity like changes in assessment or owner changes that are also crucial for other departments as well. Having this monthly will also allow us to move faster for activity like title search, compliance for property sales and things like that.
Thank you, Jen and Narita. Like I said, I wanted to also discuss the COVID's impact on our revenues, as you can see here. And also, I'd like to say these numbers have not yet been closed and finalized by the controller's office. So at the end of November, when the revenue report comes out at the end of for November, these numbers may vary slightly, but not much. As you can see, and these numbers, comparing year-to-date November numbers of 2019 to this year, real estate is performing above where it was last year. D-transfer, the real estate market has done well during this pandemic. Although that it's still coming under budget, so that's still a concern, but it is running ahead of where it was last year. And then the next, as you can see, local services, payroll prep, amusement facility usage, all down significantly from 2019. Local services, that's the $52 fee. Local services and payroll prep can also give you a kind of a idea of how much this pandemic has hurt businesses here in the city of Pittsburgh. Amusement tax, facility usage, with no sports, no games, nothing going on in the cultural district. We're hurting there significantly. And as you can see, parking tax way down from 2019 with no one, people working from home. Again, no sports or anything in the cultural district. One category I do not have is earned income. I believe that's running about maybe $1 million behind where it was this time in 2019. So with that, that's the end of our presentation, and I will send it back to Councilman Lavelle.
Thank you very much. If you could stop the screen share, that way I can see all members. But are there any members that have questions or comments?
Councilman Lavelle, this is Deb Gross. I don't know if I can't see other members either, so I'm not sure yet. There they are.
There we go. All right. Go ahead, Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. There, I didn't have my camera on, so now here I am too. I appreciate it. Yes, Director Anderson, welcome and thank you for stepping into this new role and helping us through this crisis. Let me first say thank you to all of the personnel in your department. During this time of revenue crisis, it looks to me, and I'm sure the council members where we sit, that your department helped us be in a better cash position than we might otherwise have been. And I understand, I think that many of them have been basically our frontline workers and have had to been working in the building. Whereas, as members, we've been working at home. So I really want to say thank you and I appreciate that. You've done a tremendous pivot, as everyone's talking about, or shift to changing your processes. And if you had not done that, we would be in a worse cash position than we are right now. So first of all, thank you for that. I have a question that you may or may not be able to answer, because we've done about 20 hours of budget hearings, it feels like. And at one point, someone mentioned, I think it might have been the mayor on Monday, or Chief Gilman, sorry, who mentioned that there was a simulator that I think your department was doing about revenue projections. And we didn't hear all the details, and I'm wondering if you have more of the details. It's something like a company out of Philadelphia has been hired and is running revenue simulations. That's what stuck with me.
Yeah, there's a company called eConsult, I believe. I think the administration started working with them, and before I started back during the summer. And they've been looking at other revenue sources and just trying to figure out where we can maybe come up with some other revenue. But as you all know, we're kind of tied as far as what we can do, because our hands are tied because of Harrisburg. But so that's what that had to do with. So they're just
Sure. It makes me want a follow-up question. What new revenue sources would you like to see if Harrisburg would care to cooperate.
Well, it'd be nice if we could have some of our larger nonprofits pay the payroll prep tax. I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, thank you for just saying that so directly. We've had the same discussion in a couple of different budget hearings, right? If at least they're not going to pay their property taxes, could they at least pay their payroll preparation tax? And there are many thousands, I'm going to guesstimate 10,000 positions in the city of Pittsburgh that are not paying that. Employers are not paying it for some 10,000 payroll, maybe more,
Maybe probably more.
probably more.
I don't have an exact number, but it would be significant.
Yes, it would be significant. So it would go a huge way to plugging that that gap. And then I also want to commend you for we just saw in the presentation on the cleaning up of the processes around vacant properties. It was just over a year ago that you were still with the controller's office that we were at council talking about vacant properties and the controller's audit of vacant properties. And I remember keenly because Councilwoman Smith held a post agenda, but then got called into jury duty and I had to chair it for her. And it was that performance audit generated from the controller's office about what can we do in the city to make the process around vacant properties, better. Aside from all of the other legislative things, we talked to the land bank this week, we talked to URA, we talked about property reserve, but the actual just logistics of the administration of treasurer or sheriff's sale, that's what your department has to do. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's what we just saw. If you want to just elaborate a little more on what we just saw in the presentation.
I think first of all, we have to know what we have, right? That's one thing that I've talked with the mayor and Chief Gilman about, maybe doing some type of study and trying to just figure out what we have, because we don't know what we have, whether, vacant property, is there a structure on that property, any other details. So I think we have to do that. And once we know that, we just have to kind of streamline our processes to get rid of those properties, get those properties back on the tax rolls, and be better responsive to our customers when they want to buy city property, make the process quicker. I think we can do some things with title searches as far as speeding up that process. I think that process has been taking weeks, and not because of anything that staff here in the finance department, but it's just the number, and we contract with a company, and they're so backed up. So I think that's a cause. Maybe if we did something like have if somebody wants to buy a piece of property, allow that person to pay for their own title search to kind of speed up that process. I think that probably gives them more incentive to keep the process going. One thing we have an issue is we have our 3TB budget, which is separate, or trust fund budget, which is separate from the finance department budget. It's not in the best place right now. So I think doing something like that, and then we pay, I think back in 2018, we may have paid $35,000 to just for title searches. And so if we can kind of not do that, I think that helps our budget. And so I think things like that can kind of help this process and help the city get rid of vacant property.
Right. And you should communicate these things to council, right? We've had this multi-year discussion about how to move that inventory, repurpose it, not always put it back on the tax roll. I will put, right. That is we have parts of the city that are hyper invested with skyrocketing property values, that we need a balance of, and to just, because the city is changing so much, there are some places where we need to, I think, look at creating more public space or community controlled space where there's been gentrification and speculation and all this kind of stuff. So we can have that conversation, but you're putting the nuts and bolts in place. And we had just not been doing that for a very, very long time. So I really appreciate that. And so I'll just note, in case you didn't know, but you probably did, that the city of Detroit also set up a land bank kind of around the same time that we did, and did a citywide inventory. And they are a much, much larger footprint, being one of the kind of city and counties that are combined, right? Probably 5 times as many parcels as we have. And they did a citywide inventory, like, with, site assessments at each site. I think of all parcels in the city, because their magnitude of vacancy is probably even greater than ours.
Right.
So that they have, and they used a kind of technology that I mentioned before. I've talked to the company years ago now. It's called Loveland Technologies, and it was created in Detroit for these challenges. And they created a kind of texting of site conditions that uploaded into a database. And so they called it like texting about blight, or Blexting. I heard it on NPR, right? And so, but they are now kind of an established and are selling the platform. There may be others in the marketplace by now. It's been a number of years, but a way to do that. I think maybe one of Bloomfield got some funding independently from a local foundation to do a housing inventory assessment, not of abandoned properties, but even of occupied properties, to kind of just see what the needs were that residents may have. And they may have used some technology like this, where they were able to train and enlist volunteers to kind of be the inspectors and upload the information digitally. So just
Sure,
a
yeah.
side note there are a lot of cities that are just facing this similar challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Detroit, and I'll definitely look into it. But just talking conversations, we could do something, and it's not cheap. Sort of a LiDAR
Sure.
thing.
So everyone's doing it with LiDAR these days. The
No, but-
stormwater assessments, the of course, all of the car companies and near field communications, they're using LiDAR. So we actually have some LiDAR companies in the city as well, because that's what a lot of the autonomous vehicle companies are using.
Yep.
Yeah. So so those are all exciting progress. And so I don't take too much time. I also just wanted to touch also on, I think you were also at the controller's office when I requested an audit of the LRDAs, which is some number of years ago, right? And we have shifted our LRDA legislation. Finally, it took us a while, and we kept extending it. So could you clarify for me, because council had voted on changes to the 2007 LRDA. It was pretty dramatically restructured with, collaborating with the administration. But then we delayed the effective date a couple of times. And in my recollection, that the update to LRDA was to take effect this summer, like June. So do you know, like, our development community is kind of like kicked back into gear, and there's people getting their building permits. And the way it works was, right, as soon as you've gotten all through your planning processes and you pull your building permit and you go to break ground, that's when you kind of walk over and apply for your abatement.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a big construction site. So are you issuing the abatements according to 2007? Or are you issuing the abatements according to our update in 2018 or 2019, whatever it was when we filed?
We're issuing them according to the update. I believe, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. But if there was someone who had applied for their building permit and the date didn't match up with the LRDA, we are still allowing them to get the LRDA, right, Jen?
I say yes, and it was done on a case-by-case basis because of the delay of issuing building permits. If they had applied but maybe hadn't actually received it until after the due date due to COVID delays, then we were able to, or deciding to possibly allow them to use the old program.
Well, it's critically important, really, that we get clarity on it. And if you don't have it now, because the update required that you do the 10% affordable at 50% AMI.
Exactly.
So we want to make sure that we're not giving them a freebie from 2007.
Right.
No.
Right.
No.
That was my main concern.
And we are
No.
in the process of, working with law in process of getting all that updated. So, it's all ready to go.
Great,
Yes.
great. And I look forward to seeing reports on that, which was another thing that, again, you were helpful with at the controller's office, right? When we asked about it in 2017, because 2007 alerters were expiring, that's why I asked for an audit, because nobody had any information. I said, well, what was the impact of our 2007 program? Did it create development in the neighborhoods where we want development, and not just, but it looked like they were just kind of overly developing, creating hyper development in basically the strip in Lawrenceville that I represented, and maybe some Oakland as well, and some other areas. And so we really needed a reset, and it did take council a couple of years to figure out how to reset that. But there was a moment when it was impossible for us to do that assessment. And so I hope that moving forward, by you tracking and keeping track, there was literally in 2017 not a list of properties that were receiving their abatements that the public could put their hands on. We had to request it from the controller's office. So that now we have that. The last time I saw it as a spreadsheet of like, literally give me a spreadsheet of every parcel with an abatement. There was still some like missing data. When was the start date? Should they have been ended by now, or are they still getting an abatement that maybe they shouldn't be getting because we didn't really track the 10-year start and end dates? So moving forward, we hope that we have kind of tight information and management of the LERTA program.
Well, with our new real estate and tax system, all that information will be electronic. When someone wants to apply for LERTA, they'll go online and submit their application electronically. Actual electronic application, not a PDF that you have to mail in. But
yeah, it was like a one sheet piece of paper, which just kind of like filled out some information. That was like, here, you don't get you cannot pay your taxes. Yeah, it was a little loosey goosey.
It's an electronic form. All that information will be in our database, so it'll be in one place and available.
Great. That's sounds like leaps and bounds already. Appreciate it. That's all, Mr. Chair. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other members? Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Anderson and your whole team for being here and for your work today, or for your work throughout the year during this challenging time for all of us. I wanted to call attention to a couple of slides in your presentation that showed some efficiencies in your operations that will save us money through saving staff time. So especially on tax compliance, bringing that in-house seems very positive. And hopefully that's been a positive experience for you all so far, and some other places as well. Do you think that will, with the decrease in, I mean, I know that we're eliminating as many vacant positions as possible. Will that make up for that? Will that make it so that you are not really hurting from the elimination of those vacant positions, or not so much?
I mean, when the new system will allow us to repurpose some of those, just so those people, and so I don't know, Narita or Jen, if you wanted to jump in to talk more about that.
So I could kind of jump in there. So finance is in a unique place because with the system, we will definitely be able to improve our performance, allow for speed process and things like that. But what we will need to do, it will be to repurpose current roles into new roles that will be more focused into, this technology process that have been, currently doing, paperwork. So it will be a way for us, the system will allow us to do that, to repurpose, kind of reassign task within our current staff, so that we don't have to increase our staff, so it won't be an additional cost, for the department. We are trying now, the reductions were vacancies, and we are trying to, kind of again, repurpose, tasks around our current personnel, looking to not increase additional personnel. Having more vacancies, it will be challenging, especially because we want to increase our revenue collections, right? So we want to make sure that we have more people in our front end, cashiering area, processing mail, things like that, so the payments get faster to the bank. And those are always going to be, people doing that job, right? People have to feed the system for the system to work. So I say, there will be a lot of moving pieces to repurpose, so that we don't have to add more personnel. But if we have to eventually cut current roles, it will definitely be challenging.
Understood. That's a helpful explanation. And to me, it sounds like you're having to do what the workforce generally is going to have to do as automation comes online more and more. Is, you see job elimination, and then you see new jobs in response to that automation pop up, and you're going to have to do that over the course of a year, which is challenging, but glad to hear. Okay. I also wanted to raise the issue of tax compliance. I mean, your job, your task is to ensure that the revenues are such that our cash flow remains stable. But yet with COVID-19 hitting so many people in so many different ways, they often had cash flow difficulties and maybe an inability in some cases to pay taxes by the end of the year, but not an ability to pay taxes on a quarterly basis, or maybe the reverse is true. Can you speak to any steps that you were able to take to mitigate some of those hardships in certain cases without allowing for the abuse of the system, where those who were capable of paying their taxes on time without penalty were not, abusing the system?
In situations like that, we take that on a kind of a case-by-case basis. We've had situations, and we're not talking about a large amount of money, but if there was a business who were current on their taxes and paid, because of the hardships, paid something late, or we'd waive a penalty or something like that to ease the burden on them. But again, that's a case-by-case basis. Not happening a ton, but it's definitely happening.
That's good to hear. I mean, I think we as council members hear directly from some of those struggling business owners, especially in the hospitality industry, and say, they're hit from this angle and that angle, from the county tax and from, the liquor tax and from various city taxes. And to know that whether you're a homeowner or whether you are, or a property owner, or you are a business owner, that there is perhaps, not necessarily, but perhaps some flexibility there, is good to hear. On the topic of our powers, I mean, these days, I don't know who all is tuning into these budget hearings. I think there's more of an interest in our operating budget than in years past. And so taking off of the theme that, or, picking up from the theme that Councilwoman Gross brought up on what taxes we have the power and ability and authority to touch. I know that we do not have, and people should be aware, we do not have the power to issue new taxes or implement new taxes. And there are very few that we actually have the power to increase or decrease. Would you be able to just give a quick little primer on that for anyone who might be tuning in or watching, so that they understand what our limitations truly are?
Sure.
Not to put you on the spot. No, and if it's something that would be better served to, to email us later and for us to.
No, our city controller and my former boss is right. He always says, the city of Pittsburgh exists because the state of Pennsylvania says it can. And so the issue we have is we have to rely on the state legislature to allow us to levy taxes here in the city. So, as I mentioned earlier, payroll prep tax, where we can, that's only on businesses now. It's not on nonprofits. We would think it would be helpful if the legislature would give us the power to levy that on some of the larger nonprofits. So that's kind of the situation we're in. I hope that was a good example. And
Are there others that we have the power to raise or to lower?
well, yeah, let's see. I think local services, right? Council can raise that, I believe. And some others.
Very few that we're actually even
but
able to touch.
it's very few.
Real estate is typically the
Real estate. Yeah.
large one that we
That's it.
have
Yeah.
the ability
Right.
to either at 511 taxes, although at one point we had the ability to do things. In fact, the parking tax was one of those things that we raised, and then the legislature came in and capped us on how much we could raise it and actually controlled it. And that was back in 2003.
That's correct. Yep.
So that's just the point I wanted to make was, and thank you for that. It's just very, very few that we're actually even able to touch. So not very many tools in our toolbox when it comes to increasing revenue from a variety of sources. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Councilman Wilson?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Anderson. And also, we had the interim director, Gula, for some time, and I appreciate you all during these times and everything you do. So I did have some questions. You had some goals that you had written in the budget, and I just wanted to ask for some clarification on those. One is the goal to replace tax and property data software with solutions software that easily integrates with other systems. And I was just curious, it sounds good to me, but I just want to know what you mean. Are you replacing a system called eProperties?
No, that's referring to our new real estate and tax system impact. And I'll let Narita, she's working on it. She can talk about that. But that's what that's.
Yeah, the impact will be our new tax system. It will be an enterprise system, which means it will include business taxes and real estate taxes in one system. The eProperty system you referenced is the sell property platform that we use. And that will be tied, it will be an integration with this new system so that things like parcel ID, tax delinquencies and things like that will be easily accessible from the sales platform.
Okay. Are you coordinating with other departments on this to use that platform as well?
There's been some conversations. One of the biggest challenges is that we need to be able to connect with our tax system to improve the data that is currently housed on eProperty. To make sure that when we push it out to other departments' access, they actually have accurate data to manage. So the goal is yes, but it will be more like a step 2 to our plan.
Okay. Okay. You also have a goal of increasing the number of previously unregistered businesses to be brought into compliance, and with the times that we're in, I was curious to, in terms of small businesses and keeping them afloat. I was curious on how you intend to meet that goal at the same time to not hurt small business.
So the non-registration is just a ordinance that requires all businesses to register with the city. Based on their activity, they have some liabilities and they're required to file tax forms, even if it's 0. And it's just a way that the city, keep an accurate count of how many businesses are, have activity within our city limits. We have a unique challenge, and it's that, in the larger community, the city of Pittsburgh is viewed as much bigger than our parcel size, right? So a lot of people come in and out and do business in the city and don't know that they should be registered in the city, or they should be filing a portion of that revenue in the city. So the idea is that this, process become more accessible, more visual for everyone, but also connects with other entities like we're doing now with Jordan Tax. If someone, a corporation that files an earned income tax with Jordan, means that they do an activity in the city, right? So they should be registered with the city as well. So we are partnering with them. With the new system, we'll be having a direct interface with them. That way, if they fail to register with the city, but they file taxes with Jordan, we can say, hey, you also have to register here. But it is more of us being able to keep an accurate count of the business activity within our area.
Okay, thank you for that. And then another one of your goals that I was just picking out was, and you touched on this already, but I just wanted some clarification on it. You have to streamline the property sale and the acquisition process in order to improve the efficiency and coordination to increase revenues, reduce costs, and the processing times. Now, you have that as a goal, but that's pretty big. That's a big goal. Is that, like, how do you plan to accomplish that? Like I said, I know you alluded to some of this before, but can you put some numbers on that goal? Like, how many properties do you plan to sell, and like what would be expedited in the process?
I think what we have focused is on really streamline our process. Right now, we're taking a long time to manage, an X amount of property just to do the verification process. We believe if we can streamline that verification process, that we can do more treasure sales a year. That we can clear more property. So it's a matter of like clearing the pipeline to make availability for new process to come in. And one big challenge is that approval process. So making sure that we contact, the water authority to make sure there's no, debt there. That we contact internal departments to make sure that there's no problems with that property or with the applicant, to make sure that applicant is tax compliant. And right now, if you put into mind that in the city and the department itself of finance, there are managing 11 different data sources, right? And then we have to come out of that, our department, and go to PLI and other departments to make sure that all these things are gathered. It takes a whole lot of time. So our goal is, if we can generate a way to automatically pull that data, so from 6 weeks of process, we may be able to put it down to 3 weeks of process. Then we'll be able to have treasure sales more often in a year, which eventually will increase our revenue.
Okay, sounds great. Looking to hear more as it continues. I had a point of clarification when you were mentioning, and that's why I want to clarify this. Do I understand this when you're talking about integrating into One Stop? Are you suggesting that people could pay their taxes through One Stop, or is that just my misunderstanding?
Eventually, we could add a link into One Stop for them to actually register, and that registration process will take you to tax filing based on your tax business type and things like that. The one-stop shop that I for permitting, one of the things that we're working on there is to create an automation on the compliance, on the tax compliance. When they issue licenses, they require the person to register with the city and stay in a compliance status. Right now, all that process is on paper. And the idea now is that when we move to a new system, when a person goes to register, apply for a license, or even renew their license, they will put the tax ID number on the system, and the system will automatically say, yep, go ahead, you're good to go, or no, there is a problem, this is what you need to do. So trying to facilitate that without have to wait, for someone to generate a letter or, make a call, especially in times like with COVID, it's really challenging to have this paper process. So it's going to improve the customer experience, but it's also going to shorten the permitting approval process on the other end as well.
Mhm. Okay. I really love that you all are thinking about how to, continue the integration of I guess, suggest databases that you all manage or that are managed for the city and how they communicate with each other. Are you the last question I had was just about City Source. It's been a good partner for the north side, and I just want to, we plan to use that service or that contract for the three taxing bodies, property maintenance. We plan to continue doing that in the future. How is that going since it's been transferred to finance recently from 311?
I think it's been going well. I don't know, Narita or Jen, if you have any other opinion or know anything else. But it's my understanding that we are in the process of renewing that. So,
This is Jen, and I would agree with you that we have no issues with City Source, that they do a good job for us. So, and I think we did extend their contract until next year.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for your time and thanks for everything you're doing during these times. And I have no further questions. Have a good one.
Thank you, Councilman Coghill.
Yes. Hey, Doug, good to see you again.
good to see you, Councilman.
And looks like you're all settled in at this point. And that can't be an easy task with the under the current circumstances to not be able to see your team. But I will say, in listening to you, it looks like you came into a really good situation with Jennifer and Narita there to, keep the ship steady during your transition. So it sounds like you got a great team there. I just had a couple questions, Doug. I talk to your former boss often about the nonprofits, and, I'm glad to hear you mention that. I know that's out of our hands, but yeah, it sure would be nice to be able to have that taxing power or, to lobby the state to do so, I guess. One way or the other, hopefully, we'll have an amicable settlement with the nonprofits and we won't have to pursue something like that. But at some point, though, we need revenue or some sort of contribution from the nonprofits. There's no question in my mind. I take it that's the way you feel too in what you said, and not to put you on the spot, but do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it has been a challenge. You're right. Not being able to meet face to face with people here in the office and not seeing them daily has made it challenging, but we're getting by. But yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. We need help from Harrisburg. We need to be able to do what we getting those more revenue through maybe the payroll prep and maybe some others that I'm not thinking of right now. So it's like we're at their mercy almost, but hopefully we can have conversations with them about how to move that forward.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, they're a big part of the city, and I, for the most part, support all these, CMU, Pitt, you name it. I think they're wonderful institutions, and we're blessed to have them in the city. But at the same time, it's come to that. So, the other question I had was on Jordan Tax Services. Now we hire them out, and they are based out of where?
They're here in the city, I believe.
Are they? Okay.
Bethel Park.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Okay, Bethel Park. And just explain to me how that works. So first of all, I don't want us to be in the business of collecting our own taxes. I think it sounds like a nightmare. But do they collect on a percentage basis, or how does that work?
Jen, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. For earned income, you actually file your taxes through them. So we don't actually see any of your tax documents. They remit to us then minus their collection fee, which they take a piece of right off the top, the remainder. So
yeah, that's what I'm asking about, Jennifer, their collection fee. What is their collection fee? Is it based on a percentage? So if somebody's...
It is, I want to say it's 1%.
Okay, right. And if they're unable to pay the taxes or get paid on the taxes, do they still pay us?
They pay us whatever they collect.
Got it. Right.
So if they don't collect it, we don't see it either.
Got it. Right. Well, makes sense. Okay, that's it. Hey, listen, everything looks good. I think your department does great, and you have a lot of challenges in front of you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further members, excuse me? Seeing none, just thank you all for being here. Appreciate your work. Mr. Urbanek?
Yeah, but first I want to thank Doug for coming on and doing what he's doing, as well as Jennifer and Yurda. Finance does an excellent job. I did have a couple questions real quick, just for clarification for myself, something I didn't get out. The pension payments in the plan, this is something I forgot to ask Director Paulus as well too. The pension payments are decreased by approximately $1.6 million. And if you can't get the answer now, that's fine. But I was just trying to get a clarification, because we have in our ordinances that we have a break-even point with our pension payments. So in other words, we pay, we put in what we pay out. So between the parking asset and the employee contributions, we make sure that that is even, so we don't have to cash in on any of the investments, and the investment can continue to grow. So I was just curious about the 1.6. Is that extra money that we normally would put in above that break-even point, or is that due to reductions that are listed in the budget?
I'd have to get back to you an exact answer to that, Bill. But as far as 2020, this year we've put in the MMO what was budgeted. We've still paid all the 4 quarterly payments from the parking tax revenue into pension. So the pandemic hasn't really hit us there. But I will get you an answer on that more clearly.
Not that I'm going to retire anytime soon, but the other point I wanted to get as well too was on our tax revenues, our current taxes. Are there, and I want to give a plug to Sarah Capps, who's been doing a great job keeping us up to date on your projections. Now, during the time of COVID, it seems like we don't really have many, with the exception of maybe the transfer tax and our real estate tax. As far as the other amusement taxes and all that kind of stuff, it's almost impossible to forecast. But we have seen some increases in revenue as the ebbs and flows of opening and closing and all that goes. Is there any? Do we have any certainty over the next couple of months of what may or may not happen based upon what we've seen already?
Well, if there's anything we've learned through this process, I don't think anything's certain. So, we're continuing monitoring all our tax revenue sources, and we're just keeping an eye on everything.
So you would basically say that with a reduction of 38 million projected for next year, and I think we're down 55 million this year, that we're going to need to take from the fund balance. So you would be safe to say that we need a large influx of funds from somewhere.
Right. We're hopefully, yes, we do. And hopefully, the federal government will come through with something after the beginning of the year. I'm hopeful it will, but, I don't know, looking at the news today and yesterday, I wasn't as hopeful as I was maybe last week, but I think something will happen.
And just finally, I wanted to make a comment on the nonprofit piece as well too. Something I've advocated for a long time, since 2003, when I got involved in some of the negotiations in Harrisburg, and costed some of that out. We were this close to getting a nonprofit agreement, or not agreement, but having the nonprofit payroll tax voted on in Harrisburg and passed. And unfortunately, we missed out on that and missed out on some additional revenues that we needed to make our city whole at that point. I would hope that there is an opening now, because it's not just the city of Pittsburgh that's hurting. This could benefit all of the larger municipalities throughout the state and anywhere there's larger nonprofits. So I would hope that that we would continue to lobby Harrisburg for this. I think there's a window at this point in time, but I hope we do that, and whatever support the administration needs, your department needs, or the controller needs, I'd be glad to make sure that that's available from my historic records. So. But thank you all for all you do. Councilman Lavelle?
Thank you very much. And thank you all from the Finance Department, Director Anderson, and everyone for being with us today.
Thank
We
you.
will now transition to the Department of Law, along with the ethics hearing, I believe, as well.
Yes, the Department of Law provides legal advice and services as in-house corporate counsel of the city, which often involves providing advice to the mayor, city directors, city council, and various government units. It represents the city in all legal aspects of its daily government functions. It also represents the city in high-profile cases significantly impacting public policy and city residents' quality of life. Department of Law operates as a quality, proactive boutique law firm, attracting talented professionals with impeccable integrity from the public sector, public and private sector. Department of Law is divided into a couple of different service areas or divisions: litigation, labor and employment, general municipal law, tax law, real estate law, zoning law, claims, and open records, and serves as the open records officer. The Department of Law this year, once again, speaking in reductions, the department's total budget is $5,213,000. That's a decrease of what was anticipated in last year's 5-year plan of $750,000. Total full-time positions are 32.5. It's a reduction of 2 positions. Reductions in the first 6 months of the year: elimination of 1 assistant solicitor, elimination of 1 legal secretary, 1 assistant solicitor is decreased from $94,388 to position to $87,503. There's a part-time law clerk whose hours are decreased from 9,000 to 7,320. Total amount in there is from $120,000 to $109,000. Non-salary budgeted items have been increased by $141,000 from what was anticipated in the 5-year plan. Changes include FOP Legal Defense Fund transferred from law to police, $100,000 as required in the FOP's collective bargaining agreement. Legal fees for outside counsel was increased by $85,835. Professional services for experts increased by $25,000, and judgments was decreased by $381,000 or 27%. The anticipated July 1st workforce reductions are $304,169 based on average salaries and benefits of the current employees. That equals the elimination of 6 to 7 positions. Law Department has no capital projects. Some of the judgments line item in the operating budget is for the acquisition of properties affected by landslides. Also, the Law Department no longer has any, doesn't have any trust funds. Law Department no longer has any revenues. They are actively involved in litigation on a number of revenues, including the non-resident sports facility usage fee and the outdoor advertising excise tax. I can speak of the Ethics Hearing Board if you'd like to, Chair.
Yes.
Okay, let me just go into the budget here for them. Total budget $169,000. It decreases from what was anticipated in last year's plan by $5,000. Non-salary budgeted line items have been reduced by $6,800 from what was in last year's 5-year plan. Legal plan for outside counsel was reduced from $50,000 to $45,000. Court-related fees are reduced by $1,600, and workforce training was reduced by $175. The Ethics Hearing Board does not contain an anticipated July 1st workforce reduction line item. It's not possible to eliminate 12% of a half of the position. So the Ethics Hearing Board does not have any capital projects, trust funds, or grants. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Councilman.
Thank you. Thank you. Solicitor Hilton.
Thank you, Councilman Lavelle. Thank you, council members. Thank you, Bill. Bill, thank you for that breakdown. And Bill did go through briefly a department overview. Just thought I'd add a little more description to that. We do currently have 22 attorneys and approximately 10 staff members who support the attorneys and everything we do in the law department. Those 22 attorneys are broken down into 4 main areas that many of you have an executive session or otherwise come across a number of the attorneys. There's the federal group, and they deal with the Section 1983 civil rights claims and employment discrimination claims primarily. Then we have the state tort group, state court group, which primarily deals with torts. So the kind of trips and falls and other claims, tort claims brought against the city. We then have the labor and employment group. They deal primarily with labor negotiations and contracts, dealing with grievance disputes, as well as compliance advice to HR and other departments. And then we have the largest group, which is the municipal group. And those are the attorneys that, in addition to kind of the separate practice areas of taxes, zoning, right to know, and real estate, deal with the day-to-day corporate counsel affairs of the city of Pittsburgh. So they're the attorneys who are dealing with drafting contracts, reviewing contracts, providing advice regarding the constitutionality of legislation, dealing with First Amendment questions, dealing with just a wide variety of things. And I want to take the opportunity to really thank truly talented and dedicated people in the law department. I thank them for their hard work always, but in particular, the majority, as we are required to try, do telework. And I thank those people for being so flexible. And I think those who do have to come into the law department and following our protocols and just being on top of things and helping me make sure that everyone is as safe as possible during this time. I also want to commend those attorneys who not only have been handling the day-to-day work, but also a number of questions that frankly we never have had to deal with in terms of kind of operating during a long-term pandemic. And I do feel very lucky and grateful to work with such a great team. In terms of goals for next year, the law department, we have a number, but I just will highlight 3. One, we have an over 20-year-old truly legacy document management system that we're looking to update for next year. We also are looking to update a number of what I'll call our standard templates that we use for various types of contracts in line with best practices. And we're also looking into best practices with hiring outside counsel and adopting some of those as we proceed into 2021. And that's, really the background I wanted to present. And Councilman Lavelle, if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Councilman Coghill.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Yvonne. Good to see you.
You too.
Team. So, Yvonne, I just want to address, often I use these budget hearings to try to address some of my own business, okay? And this is just something I want to make sure it's on your radar screen.
Okay.
And it has to deal with legal, of course. And it's concerning Berg Place in Carrick. You know, we had been meeting often when we were downtown to some degree as to where that was at. But I really need that cleared up. You know, we're trying to find a developer to look at the place, but it's kind of all held up, you know, and it has been for years. So do you know anything about that? Is there any updates on that?
I will, the last time I can recall, we were working with the URA and there had been some bankruptcy matters filed, so there was a stay. But I have not had an update recently, so I'll be happy to look into that for you.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Now, I don't want to hold the other members back with my personal business, but the other thing was, you know, as far as like our judgments go for, like you said, the tort, people will trip and fall, you know, regardless what it is, city sidewalk. And we see it every week pretty much in front of us, you know, settlement case for 22,000, one for 12,000. Are we, and I know how to, you know, I kind of know how it works. You know, it's often many times easier and less expensive to settle. So you're making a good financial decision as it is to fight it or, you know, investigate it. But I'm sure we don't do that, right? We just decide to some point what the merit is. And if, you know, and then we decide, okay, is that how we work?
So it depends. A lot of the matters that eventually turn into lawsuits are originally brought as claims. And so we sometimes have two bites at the apple, so to speak. And often, you know, the claims administrators apply the applicable law under the Tort Claims Act. There are times where the city is simply immune from liability and we would deny the claim. And often people will come back and file a lawsuit. And so, yeah, I mean, we're always bringing out the best defenses for the city. There are times where, you know, we look at the case, the attorneys have a process in, you know, we talk throughout the case as to what the status is and what the recommendations are. And then we proceed accordingly. Each one is obviously quite different and fact dependent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just wondered how that worked. So the last thing was, you know, I think Director Urbanek brought up how, you know, judgments for, you know, landslides and flooding, they go, or I'm sorry, for landslides, will that apply to flooding as well?
So I think OMB makes a determination as to where they put funding for different types of potential areas of liability. It just happened that because of, I guess, how the budget was apportioned, that landslides are considered to be included in the law department's judgment account. I don't believe there's money in there to necessarily cover flooding events either, specifically.
And I understand, you know, the last couple of years have been a really tragic landslide issues, and flooding has, you know, not been there. However, I'm expecting it back full force at some point. And there's no reason why we probably couldn't put that money into, you know, for landslides. It's kind of just emergency for natural disasters, really, right?
Right. Well, whether it's in the judgment account, it's if we're sued and we have to pay it out, whether it's coming from the law department's judgment account or if it's paid through another account. Like I said, that generally depends on where OMB decides to put it. But for the past couple of years, they've decided to put funding for landslides and kind of the acquisition of properties in conjunction with landslides in the law department account.
Right. Okay, well, I'm good. That's good. I appreciate you, Vaughn. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members with questions? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Wilson.
Yeah, I just had a question. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Solicitor Hilton. I wanted to I noticed that you have 331 contracts that are in the budget that you've done in 2019. Do all those come to council? Is that part of the breakdown you were giving earlier on during your overview?
Right, so that was the number of contracts reviewed, and that would include, and that was in 2019. That would include a variety of things. So, there's always going to be authorization from council to enter into each of these contracts, but some of them may be grant agreements where you're kind of authorizing the money per a particular program. So it's not necessarily 331 separate resolutions if that's what you're asking. But yeah, that indicates that between intergovernmental agreements or grant agreements or, construction easements, a wide variety of agreements that would include that number, be included in that number.
Okay. All right, thanks. I just had that question.
Thank you. Any other members? If not, I just have a quick question. What percentage of work do we have to, rough guess, what percentage of work do we have to hire outside counsel for?
So I really would have to get back to you on a concrete number. I think it's number of case-wise, case-wise, not a great number, but of course, when we have to hire outside counsel, it can add up. It tends to be in two areas, either for areas that are quite specialized where we need some assistance, or in areas where we have a potential of a conflict of interest, where because the law department needs to represent the city of Pittsburgh, normally we can also represent named directors or other officials who are named, but there are some times where we cannot do that due to a potential conflict of interest. So then we would have to hire outside counsel.
Okay.
It's hard to quantify. I can get you a percentage if you want to know in terms of amount spent. Less than 10% of cases for sure.
Less than 10%. Okay. I just remember some years back, there were a number of cases where we did hire outside counsel, and there was just a conversation of, and obviously we can't do it right now, but there was a conversation of, do we need to beef up internally our own law department so that we're not having to go out to outside counsel as often? But I haven't seen that recently either. So that's why I was really just curious.
So we've done a couple things to try to reduce reliance on outside counsel. We still have hired occasionally outside counsel, for example, for labor and employment work, but with the experience we have in-house, we don't have to do it all the time now for negotiating collective bargaining agreements. So we can reduce it based on just the internal knowledge that we are gaining. And also we were able to bring on some new attorneys last year. So that hopefully also will reduce the need as they gain more experience. Again, we're generally going to outside counsel where there are areas that we don't necessarily have the expertise to handle them. Or like I said, there's a conflict of interest, but we are trying to reduce that for sure.
Okay, appears to be working. Thank you very much. If nothing else from members, we do need to announce that budget hearings will continue tomorrow, first at 10 a.m. with the Department of Public Works, both the administration, environmental services, facilities, and operations. And that will be chaired by Councilman Coghill. And then at 1:30, we will have Parks and Recreation, which will be chaired by Reverend Burgess. And then immediately following Parks and Recreation, we will have the newly created Office of Community Health and Safety, which I will be chairing. So with that, we now need a motion to recess our budget hearing.
Motion to recess.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We are recessed. Thank you all.